I love therapy.
Okay, good.
You should have therapy. He should have therapy. Everybody should have therapy.
Okay, good. What did he say?
Therapy, therapy, therapy.
Yeah, is it just saying therapy that you're into now?
I'm on a date tonight, so I'll have to just up your guts. No, I'll just do it in front of her. She'll be
He's kept going! He scored! Oh, Stockport pressure. And the header into the back of the net! That's Palmer! Armstrong, played in again. And a superb goal! Johnny did it! Lisa! Rose tries to get the ball in. Wilkinson!
It's a 5-star performance from Stockport County.
All right, we got a small house, but we got a big bloody heart, I tell you.
Oh, here we go. Burnt but not beaten. Singed but not... Come on, I'll show you where we found the first body. Hello and welcome to SK3 TV, the show for the thinking county fan. Provided the county fan's thinking, I'm intelligent enough to understand nuance and know that things don't always have to be black or white. Yes, we are here every week giving you an hour or so of top county chat relating to things what have gone before and things what are to come. And joining me, fresh from looking glum in front of a number of London's top tourist attractions, a fantastic series, we'll get that out there. It's Dave. Hello, mate.
Good evening. What a day I've had. Decided to stay in London for the weekend. Came back today. Stuck on the M6 for a good 3 hours. Was in the greenhouse of a car for all that time. Top it all off, we're still League One. So yeah, what could have promised to be a fantastic weekend and it was a fantastic weekend, as you said. I had, I think I've got 12 pictures of me sulking in London across various monuments. So maybe I'll do a calendar. Do an SK3 TV sulking calendar.
We'll have that sorted. For charity or just for you?
Charity. Let's do it for charity of our viewers and listeners' choice.
Okay, we'll get a poll out near Christmas and we'll get that out sorted. So after Sunday's game, Dave, I immediately took to making a list of those questions that have maybe gone unanswered throughout the season, various bits of speculation, opinions that can't be verified. I thought, well, we need someone to ask these questions to, because people are demanding answers. So we knew there was only one man to ask. We identified our target. We didn't overpay, and hopefully he won't suddenly get injured and never been seen again.
Not time to that way, is it?
Hey, there we go, bang, done, one. That's great. That's great podcasting. Great podcasting. No, it's a man who knows a thing or two about answering questions that he doesn't know the answers to, but he tries anyway. It's Sam Byrne. Hello, Sam.
Good evening, gentlemen. How are we?
Sam.
We're all right. We're hanging in there, really. It's sort of. You mentioned it in your tweets on Sunday about a sliding doors moment, and we bloody love a good sliding doors moment. It's really as much as people are pissed off for various reasons, a lot of them legitimate. It's genuinely exciting. Do you not think that there's going to be a rebuild? Things hopefully there'll be a bit of a change, and it's exciting. It should be.
Yeah, it is. It's just I think it's. It's not a rebuild coming off finishing 20th, is it, and just staying in the league. It's a rebuild where a lot of people will think, do we need a rebuild? We probably had a rebuild last summer, and obviously this season we've all thought, did we need that rebuild? I know we've gone on to finish third and bettered last season's finish, but it always comes with a few nerves, doesn't it? Because you don't know, you might know what's leaving, but you don't know what's coming in. So I think that's always quite a nervy thing for fans, and probably why there's a bit of panic at the moment.
Yeah. Well, we'll crack out the admin and then we'll get onto the game, and then we can move on to broader issues surrounding the analysis of the game. Oh, there's good words there. But we are, of course, brought to you proudly in association with Blackbird Kitchen. Get on their website in the episode description. And also, our episode with the only county captain to win at Wembley is still very much relevant. So get on that as well. Really, in a weird way, I'm sort of pleased that that we can still hang on to that for that episode. And also, while you're at it, like, rate, review, subscribe, hit the thumbs up if you're watching live on YouTube, and all of that business. It'd be much appreciated. Right, football after this. So we should probably very conscious as well that we got like several bookmarks on the tweet promoting this episode. So fully expecting Bolton fans in the comments to be giving it out when you're in the wrong place, because it's quite clear that they deserve to win. It's not, despite all the bits of controversy wrapped up in it. I think it's fair to say, yeah. Credit. I mean, some of us predicted in January that Bolton had beat us in the playoff final, so I think that's why I kind of got over it straight away. But in terms of the game, Sam, I think it's fair to say we didn't actually play that badly for large parts, and maybe half-time came at a bad time for us.
Yeah, I think we, after the equaliser that stood, I think we probably, looking back, you would have wanted us to go on and be leading by half-time, which is obviously easier said than done. I think we shaded the first half. I think just after their goal in that sort of opening 15 minutes, we looked really nervy and like we hadn't settled. And from then on, obviously we had the disallowed goal. We didn't have major chances aside from the goal itself. I know Stokes had a shot tipped away by the keeper, but we were shading it, I think. And then, yeah, from half time, from the start of the second half onwards, we just didn't look like we'd come out. And I think, again, we went back to how we looked in the opening 15 minutes, looked nervy. And then when you go 2-1 behind in the manner that the goal came, I think it's hard to come back. And then they make a lot of strong subs that come on and change the game in their favour. And our subs probably do the opposite and don't really have much of an impact. Obviously, Tanto had that big chance right after Bolton's second goal. That goes in, maybe it looks a little different. But yeah, I think from then on, Bolton have gone on and dominated really, haven't they?
Yeah, it almost felt like that England-Germany game in the 2010 World Cup, where it's almost that Lampard goal that gets disallowed, and you think, well, what would, we're in the ascendancy then. It was very much the same. It was, would you agree, Dave? It was very much, it almost summed up the season in that we saw some decent football from ourselves where we looked threatening, and then just some awful defending, a bit of controversy with the officials, and then to top it off, a stupid red card. Is that fair? It's just everything in one, wasn't it?
Yeah. To start with the opening goal, I've done nothing but sing Adai's praises for the last probably a couple of months now, rightly so. I think it's only fair that we call out a pretty bad mistake to start the game off. Probably nerves got the better of him for that one. And then, yeah, like you said, first half, we played really well. I spoke to Mark Brockbank yesterday, and he's
good.
He asked, so I wanted to give him credit for this. Schumacher set up a 2 times 50-minute halves so that he knows that Barry and Sidibe are going off 60, 65 minutes. So has he planned his game for that last, 30, 35 minutes? And also have we tried to win the game within that hour and then just lost our legs completely? Because when he said it like that, makes me their subs were great. Sam Dalby, people say he was shit for us. No one ever saw him play in the flesh because we were all watching it on a COVID screen.
See, I wouldn't even say Sam Dalby was shit for us. He was just anonymous.
Yeah,
he wasn't good or bad. He was just there. He was just a guy in a shirt.
Yeah, he won man of the match on Sunday, which probably says a lot about how tight the game was up until sort of 55 minutes. And then, to be fair, he's come on and had a big hand in the third goal. I think he flipped it around the corner for Cozy Dewberry before I made the save for the second goal. Sorry. And then obviously scored a cracking goal for the third one. And then, to be fair, you mentioned the red card there. I know a lot of people disagree with me online. I'm probably a little bit the other way around from not all the fans, but some that I saw online where I thought the red card was really harsh and I thought it was daft. Thought the foul given against the DB was probably fair. And I know a lot of people disagree with that, but I think when you watch it back, there's a little clip of the heels, and I know he then kind of collides into his second leg and knocks himself over, but I think it stems from that little clip. And I know it's accidental, and I know a lot of people don't agree with that, and obviously that's fine. But yeah, I felt a little bit the other way around, and I felt the red card at the end was just ridiculous, and that nobody wanted that. Nobody was appealing for that. There was a little in the corner where we were sat within the Bolton fans in the press box, sadly, and in the corner there's a little shout as it happened, but nothing that you really knew what they were talking about. And then we in the press box don't get told what VAR are looking at until we see it on the screen. So we thought, are they maybe looking for a penalty to County because we were at the other end at the time? And then even when the referee was looking, I don't know if you guys could see from the County end, but the referee went to the screen, turned around to make his decision, and then went back again to look back at the screen. So it was a little bit like, no, actually, that's not right. I need to go and have another look. And I just thought it was, I know some people think it was a daft pull the hair by Dacres Colby. For me, I think he's tussling for his shirt. He's not looking at Sissoko. I think he pulls his hair and then realises it's his hair and sort of holds his hands up. And
it seemed that way, yeah.
Yeah, I just don't think... I think obviously coming from the Premier League down, there's like this thing now that any touch of the hair or pull of the hair is an automatic red. And I think, it probably isn't as black and white as that. But I just think in that little stoppage where they were checking for the red card and the hair pull, it just reinforced for me that VAR is just rubbish.
Because I was watching on TV. I say unfortunately, but in the end, fortunately. And we'd just put the ball into their box. It got cleared, and that's when the commentator said, "Oh, they're checking for a penalty here." So I assumed something had happened there. Maybe Benno had been pulled or something, and then for it to be, and then like I said, it was weird the way the referee went about it. He went for a look, came back, went for another look, and which does suggest it was a tough decision to make. That it wasn't as clear cut as.
That's the whole
thing.
But
it's the fact that was what they concentrated on with VAR. There was a potential for a red card for Burstow in the second half for what looked like a stamp, and I was so surprised that didn't get looked at.
Yeah, Sidibe in the first half on Farino, I think, was a very similar challenge. When Farino went down injured after that, and then Sidibe went down for a little bit as well. And then in the second half, Burstow on Norwood. Norwood stretched in to win the ball, which he has done, and then Burstow's landed on Norwood's shin. And neither of those challenges were reviewed. And I just thought, if that was the Premier League, how many times do you watch Match of the Day and see that given as a red card? And I'm not saying that's the right decision, but I just thought in the moment, those two challenges from Sidibe and Burstow. But then I suppose if I'm moaning about VAR, I can't ask for other things to be looked into. I just thought, I get, on one hand,
it's got to be used consistently.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And I get the argument of, it hasn't been used for 46 league games, or 48, including the playoff semi-final. So why in the final? But then on the other hand, I suppose the counter argument would be, if you've got the technology available at Wembley Stadium, why wouldn't you use it to try and get the right decision? But clearly, it's the actual decision making within VAR that's probably not quite there.
I said at the time that with the Sidibe foul for the disallowed goal, I was confident that if that had been at the other end and Bolton had scored, we'd have been furious with it. That's how I try to frame if there's a decision we're not happy about, I try and frame it like that. And a lot of the time, you do think, oh yeah, we'd be livid if it was the other way around.
Yeah, and the way I looked at it, it was horrible because that's our first exposure to VAR. Obviously, we had it in the 2023 final, and there was maybe I think there was a point around looking for handball against Noyle on the line just before Carlisle then equalised. So we don't know whether that would have actually gone to the screen or not. It looked like handball at the time, but then Carlisle scored anyway. So that was our first exposure to it. And it was horrible because the County fans we're looking at them from the other end. And I just felt as soon as the ball went in that Bolton was surrounding the referee, and knowing that VAR was in use, it just felt like it wasn't going to go our way. And I just looked at it and thought, if Sidibe's through on goal and Farino clips his heel like that, we'd be asking for a red card for not trying to play the ball. And I know it's an accident, but you've brought him down and stopped him running through one-on-one. So I know a lot of people thought it wasn't a foul. And obviously we went on to equalise then anyway. I just thought if we could have got in 2-1 up at half-time, it might have completely changed the game.
We should make it clear as well. None of us here is saying we lost because VAR was in use. Let's get that
100%,
clear.
yeah.
We're just moaning at the fact that it was actually just being used in the first place. To celebrate a goal the way we did to equalise and then have it snatched away, oh my God. I've always seen it on telly and thought that must be awful. And it bloody is. And then
I've seen people saying they didn't get to celebrate, they didn't really celebrate the second one just in case.
The ball in, crosses into Sidibe and he's scoring, and you think there's nothing wrong with that, is there?
Yeah. The ball goes into the far corner for the second equaliser. And I'm thinking, right, what could be wrong there? Yeah. Bailey's crossed it in. Is Dacres Colby offside when he first makes a run? Does he give him a nudge in the back? How far back are they going to take it? And look, I know, like you said, Dave, I just said Bolton dominated the second half for me, and the subs really helped them win the game, and Schumacher got it spot on and nullified Louis Barry. Like you say, he would have known Sidibe would have gone off after an hour, 65 minutes. But it just, I know that Bolton fans have been not too fussed, clearly, because they got to celebrate the equaliser being disallowed. But I just think you just hope that it doesn't come back for Bolton in the future in the Championship final, or when they get back into the Premier League, because you can't. I don't think for me that you can have it that you like VAR if it goes for you and you dislike it if it goes against you. It just has to be you want it or you don't. If we all just go through life and football celebrating when we get a decision for us for VAR and slamming it when it goes against us, then it's never going to change, because the authorities will think, well, people are just, they're only complaining when something goes against them. So, well, and I know a lot of fans out there will think that VAR got it right, they'll think that they got it wrong, but I just thought it just, maybe because we lost it made it worse, but it just left a sour taste, even at half time when it was 1-1. So it wasn't even at full time when we'd lost the game, but at half time at 1-1, it just felt crap. Just knowing that VAR had been used and it had gone against us.
Is it true that both clubs had to vote on whether it would be used, or is it just always being used?
I saw that online. I asked when I saw that, because I was always just told and understood that it was just EFL finals would always be VAR, and I think that's the case. I've not heard anything to say that it was actually voted on. It's just the 3 EFL finals have it, and it's available to be used at Wembley, so that's what's done. And if anyone knows any different, I'm happy to be corrected, but I saw that online and I asked at the time, asked around and didn't hear anything any different.
I mean, for all the VAR talk, it just, I mean, we've mentioned Adama Sidibe obviously coming up big in 2 Wembley finals, but I think possibly the only player who's played in both of those finals this season who can hold his head up high and think he gave everything. And it showed when he got subbed. There was a kick of a water bottle in a storm straight down the tunnel, which we've seen from Mothersill as well this season, and not really seen him since. But it's been very noticeable with Sidibe that within, I don't think the players would have even got changed after the game before his agent was starting to tout him round again, which, given the way we signed him and the fact he's 27 making up for lost time, you can't be surprised, can you?
Yeah, exactly. How we got him in January, there was a lot of talk in Scotland and in the Scottish press, and they seemed to know every detail of the deal. And when there was a little hold up, it was straight out that there was a hold up and it might be in jeopardy. He's got a busy agent, and that's fine. Like you say, he's got to move to League One from that, and he's done really well and looked probably our best player in the second half of the season. I know someone asked us online about him not finishing in games, and even before I saw the stuff online about interested in him today, I just thought that's something we've got to nail. And is it something? Is it, if he gets a move and goes on elsewhere, will he continue to not play 90 minutes, or is it a county thing? And we're throwing him before he fades, because there was neutrals at the game on Saturday, and neutrals that I've listened to in podcasts and punditry afterwards who were just baffled that he was taken off. But we were chatting at half time in the press box, and I was saying to the guys around me, what are we going to do when he goes off after an hour? Because he will, and we all know that he will. And Challoner's mentioned him going off after an hour in his previous post-match interviews about, that's the way he plays, he's explosive. I just think in a playoff final, with all, I love Tanto Lafay, I love what he did in his first spell, but we all know it didn't work for him in his second spell. If you leave Sidibe on the pitch for an extra 10, 15 minutes, are you getting any more from Tanto Lafay than you would do from a tired Adama Sidibe? It's something we've got to work on. Even if whoever the manager is, whether Sidibe stays or goes, it's something that we need to work through and work out. And we haven't left him on the pitch long past 60, 65 minutes. So, is there not an argument, especially in the last game of the season, to just leave him on? And I know that there'll be talk of we've got a lot of injured players, and maybe that's how you do get injuries. But it just seems a very strange one that we can't just give him that extra 10 minutes or so. And I didn't think he looked too bad in the second half. No. He always does fade a little bit, but he was no quieter than Ollie Norwood or Louis Barry or Odin Bailey. And he was occupying the Bolton defence in a way that they weren't occupied for the last half an hour.
You touched on Louis Barry there as well. As we've seen before, teams have set up to stop him. And when they do that well, it does work. We saw that against Birmingham last season. They for the most part managed to stop him, and then it's come to a big game, and you wouldn't even have known he was playing. Do you think this is going to be the last we see of him now, and can we finally put it to bed?
No,
It's going to
probably
be a
not.
boring
Because,
summer.
yeah, I suppose the only way it gets put to bed, it's not going to be put to bed, is it? Because even if he goes somewhere else in the summer on loan, there's talk. It's just never going to end, is it? And unless he gets a big move somewhere else, or unless he comes back to county for good, which would have been a lot more likely had we gone up. I think the only way, and sorry, I'm not putting it to bed here, but I think the only way we see him is if he and Aston Villa are willing to take a season on loan in League One. But even then, you're setting yourself up for talk of the January recall and things like that. So, unfortunately, unless we see him early in the transfer window get a big move or get a move to a Championship club, then it's probably going to roll on.
Just on the back of that question, I'd like to set up a Sam Byrne blacklist, right? So questions that Sam Byrne will not get or should not get for the summer. Let him have a holiday. So when a season ticket's being announced, when are they going on sale? When will I get my season ticket? Is Louis Barry being announced? We've just covered that one. When's the transfer window open? When are the pre-season fixtures being announced? Are we going to Peter Tark in Feb's play? When is the opening day of the season? And is Louis Barry coming back? So just leave Sam alone with all those questions.
And also add, why is the Carabao before the league season starts? Add that as well.
Oh, and is the virtual semi-final regionalised despite us being in it last season? So, yeah, those are the things we shouldn't ask Sam Byrne.
To be fair, like, I know it's a bit of a running joke, but when people ask if I'm happy to try and answer it. I know I was having a joke with you guys at the end of this season. Sorry, just gone about the questions around Fevrier and Mingy and Rydell. But if people ask, I'm happy to answer it if they're respectful and stuff like that. Just because I've heard it a million times, it might be their first time hearing about it. So yeah, I'm more than happy with that. But I don't know if Pinatar's happening, and I don't know when season tickets go on sale.
So, you mentioned just then there was a phrase you used that people will pick up on. Whoever the manager is, what's your gut feeling? What do you? Which way do you think we'll go? Because it's been interesting because there's been people pointing out, I think, what his deficiencies have been, particularly around in-game management with subs. There's been a few occasions this season where, like you said, Bolton subs made them stronger, our subs made us weaker. Not the first time that's happened this season. People seem to confuse that with calling for his head. For me, I wouldn't be up for sacking him. Absolutely not. If it was to be his decision, I'd think fair. I think when you get to around 5 years at a club with a manager, more often than not, things do start to get a bit stale. And I think we've been seeing that this season. But which way in your gut do you feel it's going to go?
If you're asking gut feeling and having to give an answer, I'd lean more towards, I feel like more that he won't be here on the opening day of the season. And that's not to say that, oh my God, Dave Chalmers being sacked or resigning. But that's my gut feeling based on how I felt on Sunday after the game and how he was around his post-match interview and his press conference and what the vibe and the talk online and the talk around the stadium and the ground and the club has been throughout the season. And, I'm no different to a lot of fans online on Twitter and Yellowboard and Facebook that if people have a gut feeling that maybe he's felt a little, not deflated, but his appetite he's not seemed as enthusiastic maybe as last season. And that's not to say that he hasn't been, but I spot a lot of the same things and I think a lot of the same things. And, on Sunday, I think it was very telling that, he was very non-committal. And that's not to say, he's not going to come out and say, yeah, I'm 1,000,000% staying at the club for another season. He is right that he has to have those talks with Mark Stott and Damien Allen. But I think when you weigh everything up, Simon Wilson's left the club, and I know a lot of the criticism that he's had over his time at the club, but one thing that I know is true is that him and Dave Chalmers work very well together. Yeah. And that's not to say they agree on every single signing or sale or everything, but I just know that they worked very well together, and that's from speaking to both of them and speaking to people around the club. So I think his demeanour on Sunday after the game was very relaxed and calm, and that was just completely at odds with how he was after the 2023 final. I mean, we were in the tunnel at Wembley after the Carlisle final, and he was very sort of agitated and unhappy to be doing his post-match interview, and he was gutted. And that's not to say he wasn't gutted on Sunday. I know he mentioned that it comes with experience of how to handle occasions like that. And maybe, I mean, I personally felt that because we were 3-1 down with 10 minutes to go and then 4-1 at the end, it wasn't like a nail-biting finish. It felt for me a little bit easier to stomach because it was done and dusted with 10, 15 minutes to go. Maybe that added to how he felt, but I just felt it was completely at odds with how he's been in the past. And maybe there was a little bit of acceptance, or whatever you want to call it. I'm not saying that a decision's been made, but my gut feeling at the moment, I would lean slightly towards my feeling being that he wouldn't be here on the opening day, and that's I'd probably go at the minute 60-40. That he won't be here. There's obviously a lot of things that feed into that, but I know there are conversations to be had this week with Mark Stott and Dave Challoner and Damien Allen, as Dave said in his post-match on Sunday. So we'll see how those go. Obviously, they all need to be on the same page with where they're going and what the future looks like for how Damien Allen's going to set up as a sporting director, how he works with Mark Stott, how he works with Dave Challoner. And, I think Dave kind of intimated it himself. If they're not on the same page, then why would they continue?
Do you think the appointment of Damien Allen, I mean, obviously not to spurt out the usual cliches, but he knows the club and all that sort of thing. But do you think that's indicative of a change in the financial approach from Stott? I mean, I know. People like to use the phrase "turning the taps off." Well, if the taps get turned off, we're done as a club. So the taps aren't getting turned off. Let's think that. But do you think? Obviously, he had his fingers burned by his own admittance last summer. He was the one who pushed to pay so much for Mothersill when he was advised not to. After having his fingers burnt, do you think obviously, sustainability is impossible in football. Let's nip that in the bud straight away. But certainly a more sustainable approach. Is the appointment of Damien Allen maybe indicative of that being the way we're looking to go? Like a focus on bringing youth through, developing younger players?
I think it's a focus on, like you say, sustainability is never going to happen at County or Arsenal or anywhere in the country. I wouldn't say it's a focus, in my opinion, on signing young players. They might look to sign more young players and bring players from the academy through and work with, the younger teams at Edgeley Park to try and bring players through, or even go and get players like Ethan Pye who can step up and become senior members of the first team. I think, being more sustainable in their words and maybe having a smaller budget than this season. I don't know, maybe that can be the case, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to sign in a team of youth players. I think there's probably a middle ground. The honest answer on Damien Allen is that I don't know at the minute. I've only ever had a couple of conversations with him. I know that they think that he did really well with the youth sides at Edgeley Park. Yeah. Mark Stott said in his own words, didn't he? He said in previous, I know he did that Peterborough podcast last season, and statements on the club website recently have been around trying to bring younger players through and trying to be more, I don't even know the word, not thrifty, but, they don't want to go and be in a situation where they're spending that money on Malik Mothersill or Lewis Fiorini, for example. And that's not to say that they won't go and spend money or that they won't identify players that they think they can go and get. But my feeling from reading between the lines of what they've been putting out and the move of Simon Wilson moving away from the club and Damien Allen coming in as his successor is that they probably are going to that sort of model of wanting to spend a little less in the budget.
On Simon Wilson, with obviously the departure being announced, I got the feeling it was something that maybe could have happened last year, and then there was the CEO role. I kind of got the feeling maybe that was to give him a new challenge. Would that be fair, or am I barking up the wrong tree?
Yeah, no, possibly. Yeah, I think obviously he's very, again, like I know a lot of the criticism that he's got, and I've not always been his biggest fan. Me and him have had disagreements in the past. I gave him some criticism around those early years and months at the club when you couldn't not really, because he was, rightly or wrongly, he was associated with the removal of Jim Gannon, and then he was definitely the Simon Rusk appointment. Mark Stott's come out again in public and said that the Jim Gannon decision was his as well. So it wasn't just Simon Wilson, but Simon Wilson was definitely the man who brought in Simon Rusk. So that is 100% at his door. So, I've not always been his biggest fan, like I say, but I know that he is very ambitious and wants to work his way up. And maybe that would have been part of him taking that CEO role. I think the decision to leave, it came very out of the blue to me. I hadn't heard anything early this year around it. It was in the days and the week or so before it sort of got announced. And I know I didn't get stick, but I know there's a couple of people who disagreed with my take at the time that it was announced before we'd got in the playoffs, before that Barnsley game, I think it was on the last day of the season, because it didn't want to be seen that the decision was taken because we'd failed if we didn't beat Barnsley, we didn't get in the playoffs. I believe that is part of why it was announced at that time. In terms of why he left, well, I think again, if you read between the lines of what the club do put out and what they say, County are moving towards essentially a smaller budget, and that's not to say a small budget, but smaller than what they currently have had this season and last season. Does Simon Wilson want to, hang around for a role that maybe isn't his? Maybe he's not a director of football or a sporting director that looks at bringing young players through. He wants to go and get key targets who maybe cost a little bit more money, and that's not to say that he's a one-trick pony or anything like that, but maybe it isn't what he signed up for. And that is part of the decision of, if they don't want to put as much money in next season to spend as much on the budget as they have this season, and they want to go more savvy, if you like, then maybe that isn't what he, like I say, isn't what he signed up for, and so he decided to call it a day.
Yeah. On that, talking about the whole director of football, I've had my next question preempted by the lads from the Scarf because it's knackering this podcast and stuff, isn't it, lads? Yeah. Is sporting director the same as director of football, or are there variances? Because it's very interesting that it's a different title.
Yeah, I honestly, in terms of the title itself, I honestly don't know if there's a nuance between the two. I know that Jonathan Smith has obviously been around the club for a few years. He's been heavily involved in recruitment and the work in identifying targets and helping Simon Wilson and Mark Stott and Dave Challoner with that kind of thing. So if Jonathan Smith is hanging around, so I imagine that he will have a part to play in working with Damien Allen and Dave Challoner, or whoever the manager is going to be on the opening day of the season and beyond. So whether that role is called that to allow someone like Jonathan Smith to come in and work sort of in tandem and maybe take more of the responsibility from Damien Allen than he would do from a Simon Wilson, we'll wait and see, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case.
Yeah,
really so what do you think about the recruitment? Obviously,
here we go.
It's hard because we could name Malik Mudazil last season, Brad Hills, who hasn't been poor by any stretch, obviously just injured, and others that when they signed everyone was absolutely buzzing with, and obviously it's not transpired with quite a lot of them. What do you think about it?
I think we're probably at our worst with recruitment when we spend big, and obviously that's not the case with Brad Hills, and he's obviously got a long-term injury, but he was doing really well before that. He was probably on for one of the player of the season or young player of the season awards up with Kyle Wotton, and that's worked out well so far. But in general, in the main, I think when we go and get a Malik Mudazil and there's maybe a bit of excitement, or a Lewis Fiorini, for example, that's when we're probably at our worst in recruitment, and we do get a little bit excited and giddy, and whether that's, like you say, Mark Stott mentioned earlier this season that he was involved in that Mudazil deal, whether that's a Stott thing or a Wilson thing, it's obviously an issue that we've had in the past couple of years with recruitment, and there have been plenty of deals that haven't worked that have been lower budget deals as well. So it's not a sort of hard and fast rule, but we've signed a lot of players who haven't worked out, and maybe every club is going to sign players that don't work out, aren't they? But obviously, the recruitment last summer, there was a lot of issues with it, and I think, again, talking earlier about Dave Challoner and how he's been this season and his demeanour this season, for me, he's spoken a lot about looking back on that team last season, and in the run-ins for this season, when we were potentially hanging on to hope of a second place finish, he was talking a lot about, well, we'd have to do what we did last season with that team that did an incredible achievement and went on this run, which they did, but it just felt a little bit like he was almost harking back to that team, and maybe there was some regret within the club that they moved too many players on, or they didn't replace them adequately. Me and you two guys can sit here now and we could all probably name different players last summer that I would have kept, you would have let go, you would have let go, I would have kept. And that will always happen. But I think as a whole, obviously we didn't get it quite right with recruitment last season for me. And the fact that we went on to finish third is a credit to Dave Challoner and the work that he does, because he said himself that I think it's the most adversity he's ever had as a manager this season. So yeah, like incredible work by him. And just to clarify as well, if I'm talking as me in general, as a fan, as a journalist, whatever, I would 100% have him in charge for next season, and as long as he wants to be in charge. And if he wants to be in charge, then maybe that's how it'll go. But I think there has to be that desire from both sides for it to carry on. And that's what those talks will kind of determine. But for me, yeah, like I say, I would 1,000,000% have him. And I think the fact that we've had him in the dugout has probably undone some of that bad work in recruitment.
Agreed.
Yeah, definitely. I know there was talk last season about us. I think Simon Wilson's interview at the start of last season suggested that the budget was less than it had been the season before. I mean, how that changed, obviously the Hill signing was after that, I think, and then you obviously had the likes of Louis Barry in January, so that might have changed that a bit. But it does feel like we were maybe a top 8 budget, so to finish third again with the adversity as well just shows what a good job he did. In terms of the recruitment, so obviously we know that Stott was the one pushing for Mothersill. He's the one who went higher financially than Simon Wilson was like suggested. The Nick Powell signing was another one. There was a very good long read in The Athletic around the time of his signing where he said it was down to Mark Stott. So just how much input does he have day to day, Mark Stott? Are those isolated incidents, or is he in there?
Well, obviously I'm not in those rooms at Carrington, and I'm not involved in any meetings and don't hear much about what goes on in those meetings. But from what I get the impression, it is very much, he'll get excited about a deal maybe, or he will know a player like Nick Powell who he wants to bring to the club and who has some interest. And I mean, I read that Nick Powell piece as well, and it was a lot around coming to watch a game as a guest, and then it kind of snowballed from there. And maybe that was the case with Ollie Norwood a little bit as well. And I know very early on in Ollie Norwood's time there was maybe a couple of question marks over a 3-year deal and whether he was worth it, but I think obviously we all think that he is now. But yeah, I think it is very much those Ollie Norwood, Nick Powell, and even Malik Mothersill. I don't think it was, Mark Stott didn't go and name him and identify him. It was work that was done from Simon Wilson and Dave Challoner. And I know that Dave Challoner had liked him throughout the season and had a little look in January. But I mean, he was leading goal scorer at Peterborough. You're never going to go and get a near record signing, leading goal scorer in the January. So yeah, that was one where I think Mark Stott just got involved with Darren McAntony and maybe the fee escalated from there. But in terms of the other signings, as far as I know that he does get, like I say, there's maybe a bit of excitement from him around certain signings and wanting to get involved. Whether he will feel from here on out that he doesn't want that to be the case remains to be seen. But I suppose it's, what a surprise to pay for having an owner that kind of helps take you from the National League up to League One. It's not, I'm not going to say it's his club, but do you sort of accept that to an extent because it's an owner that's kind of helped take you up the league? So it is a difficult one, but as far as I know, that is the case, that he isn't involved in those day-to-day discussions around identifying targets in general.
On Mothersill, well, it's a two-part question really. Why do you think it is that it doesn't seem to have worked out? And following on from that, do we think it's going to be a case of us cutting our losses on him, or are we going to persevere given the fee we've paid?
I think, well, it's a difficult one, isn't it? I know there was talk around, certainly online from fans and stuff, hearing things about him maybe being touted for a loan move in January. I don't think that was the case. I think maybe it could have been early on in the window, but then with injuries that you pick up and even more injuries, do you want to risk that? And then Jamie Fevrier went out to allow Tanto Lafe to come in. So maybe other things kind of progressed there. It's hard, isn't it? Because we all really want him to work out, but it just hasn't shown signs of happening this season. And then when he's shown little glimpses of putting together a little bit of form or showing encouraging signs, it just kind of peters out and fizzles out. Do you send him out on loan for a season, to go out and get some minutes and get some goals, hopefully? I know that there's been that issue with his back that kept him out of a few games, which just seems wild to me that he played so many games for Peterborough last season. And that is an issue. We talk about Dave Challoner, and like I say, I would have him here for as long as he wants to be here. And I think that the work he's done is incredible. And like I say, would have him here all day long. But is it a Dave Challoner issue, if you like? Are we a little bit too cautious with players because we've had so many injuries? Do the injuries stem from? I'm not talking about Malik Motherstill because of a back issue that maybe was pre-existing, but I've asked about injuries in training in the past, and the answer usually revolves around the intensity that we train at. I thought the Ollie Norwood one was wild, to be involved in a challenge. I know the answer from Dave Challoner was that he made the challenge, but it doesn't matter whether it was him or the other player. Don't make the challenge on Friday before the game on a Saturday. And I asked that around the club. I asked Dave Challoner, and the answer is usually something like, well, maybe we wouldn't have the success we've had if we didn't train like that. So I don't know. I'm not a physio and I'm not a football manager, but I've just thought that maybe that's an issue. That is it the players we're signing? Are we signing players who are more prone to pick up these injuries? Are we killing them in training? The answer is probably somewhere in between. And if people are to move on, obviously Simon Wilson's moved on this summer. It remains to be seen what happens with Dave Challoner. We'll probably find out, because if we continue to get them with new players, then it's clearly an issue with the players we're bringing in. But if they start to fizzle out and ease a little bit, then was it something we were doing in training?
On the availability of players and looking after them after injuries, I know you got asked this and answered it on Twitter on Sunday, but obviously that was pre-match and it kind of got buried in everything that happened during the game. Lewis Bate, very much persona non grata. I don't feel we should be taking the blame here for pulling him up on running after the captain's armband at Wembley when we needed a goal. But yeah, he does seem to be very much out of favour, doesn't he?
He does, yeah. I didn't like that either. I don't know if it speaks to something, not that incident, but he is club captain, and Ollie Norwood stepped into the breach when he was injured, Lewis Bate, and led the club to the top of the table earlier this season. Just thought it was a weird decision to make him club captain at the time. I think he was 21. For me, it smacked of, we've got this player on a free transfer on a 3-year deal. We think there's a lot of value in him. He is a really good footballer, but to me, it just felt like you're giving him the captain's armband to maybe, when the day does come that you can cash in, here's a few extra quid because he's a club captain, or
we've all played Football Manager, haven't we, lads?
Yeah, exactly. There you go. So yeah, he's clear. He's available. He's not injured. He was around. He was at Wembley. He travelled. He was around the group for Wembley. Obviously, came on at Wembley in the Luton final, which is what we were talking about when he went running for the armband from Ollie Norwood, and I think we considered a goal 2 minutes later. But yeah, he's available, and I think that speaks for itself. I don't want to start saying I've heard things about attitude and stuff like that, but I think a lot of the times with Dave Challoner, it doesn't take a genius to read between the lines of what he's saying. Again, I think what you're referring to is someone asked me on Twitter about Lewis Bate, and then someone followed up and asked about a run-in with Jack Diamond that potentially had happened. I asked about that and was told it didn't happen, and I've not just gone and asked the first person I've seen. I've asked around the club and people involved around the club, but that's not to say it didn't happen. I'm just told that it didn't. So whether they're keeping it under wraps or whether it just didn't at all, they were both withdrawn from the squad. I think performance-wise, can either of them have any complaints? I think Jack Diamond, since the stuff with Luton Town on deadline day in January, has just looked like he looked like he did leave on deadline day, because he just hasn't offered anything. And Lewis Bate, like I say, they don't fancy him. Basically, he's available. He's not been selected. He's a club captain and not been involved in any of the squads for the last handful of games of the season. So whether we see a move happen this summer, it's a long way back. But again, we're talking about the management situation. If there is to be a new manager, which is up in the air, does a new manager come in and wipe the slate clean? There's a lot that could change. But as of right now, I think it's a long way back for him.
How does that all work? Because obviously the retain list will be later this week. So if there was to be a managerial change, how does it work? Would the outgoing manager be dealing with that, or would it be for a new manager to say, right, this is what I'm doing?
I think it's all already sorted and boxed off as much as it can be. And I think we've seen it in previous seasons. It gets announced and it's never just released and retained. It's sort of under discussion and been offered a contract and things like that. So all those things have already happened. as far as I'm aware, and I think it will be out before the weekend. And there's only 3 players who were out of contract this summer. They're Ben Hinchliffe, Callum Connolly, and Odin Bailey. So
and Max Metcalf as well, I think. Although training keeper, that's a different
He's the
matter.
water boy, isn't he?
Put some respect on Max
Apologies.
Metcalf's name.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's all sorted. And look, I think I don't want to paint a picture that the manager's leaving tomorrow morning. It is up in the air, and my gut feeling, based on, like I say, how I felt on Sunday and what I saw of Dave Challoner and what I heard from him, and other things like that I hear bits of, it is slightly leaning more towards him leaving at the minute. That's not to say that he will, but like I say, those things with contracts are already sorted, and if it is to be a new manager coming in before the start of the season, then that's already sorted.
So if hypothetically, if we were to be on the lookout for a new manager, in what direction would you be looking? Because we constantly see, I've seen a lot of it this weekend. It's normally misspelt, I'll give them that, but it'll normally be, those of you who want Challoner out, like there's no one at this level who's better. Do you think we'd go marquee from a higher level, try and go for a big name, or do you think an up and coming manager, maybe a Jim McNulty?
It's hard, isn't it? And it feels wrong in a way talking about it because nothing's happened. But obviously we're talking hypothetically, and it's hard because when Simon Wilson was here, he went for Simon Rusk, it didn't work, and they had the fingers burnt, and then they went down the route of a Dave Challoner. With the way they're wanting to go with budgets and things like that, and with Simon Wilson no longer being here, do they want to go and get? Do they think they can go and attract a manager from a higher league like they did with Dave Challoner, or a top 6 League One manager? I don't know, and that's something that they'll be considering, I'm sure, when they are having these conversations. And obviously, a lot of it will revolve around, do both sides want to continue? But if the answer to that is potentially going to be no, then they'll have to be making lists, if not already, having things in mind. I do agree. I think I'm never going to say be careful what you wish for to county fans, because it's not, you can't just say that there's only one manager who's going to get you promoted out there. There is other ones that will work. But I just think, can you go and get a manager who is sort of oven ready to go and get you up from League One at the first time of asking? And if it isn't the first time of asking, how long is it a process? And you're looking at like a Mikel Arteta type manager where you give them 5 years at the level or whatever it's going to be. I think with Dave Challoner, you're more likely to be in the top 6. With a new manager, it's possible that you're going to be in the top 6. But for me, until you know who it is, it's not as likely as sticking with Dave Challoner. So I don't know. Obviously, I've heard things around Jimmy McNulty from the fans and online and things like that. I don't think there's anything that I can say, because I don't think anything's got to that stage, because we still have a manager, and after this week, we might still have the same manager.
It'd be, I think it would be rather underwhelming to go from Dave Challoner to Jim McNulty. Nothing against McNulty, obviously, but I think, having just got from won the National League playoffs, which is a great achievement, like you just said, Sam, I think I'd much rather have Dave Challoner than not have him.
I think as well, if again, hypothetical, but if we are talking about other managers and we are talking about, look, it's still, we're a top end, as of the past 2 seasons, we're a top end League One club. Maybe in budgets we're top half mid-table. Does a manager, if it's Jim McNulty or whoever else from the lower leagues, do they necessarily want to take the step up to a club that has a lot of pressure of expectation, who's just fallen short of 2 years in a row, who everyone knows they want to take that step in the 3rd season with potentially a smaller budget than what they've had in the past couple of years? So there's a lot of questions, isn't there? And obviously none of them are going to be answered until we know the answer to the first one, which is going to be this week. Those talks are held with Dave Challoner and the club.
Ben Hinchliffe, obviously, I think we can all expect that he will be, maybe not on the release list, maybe he'll announce that he's leaving before he gets released. Who knows? But can you tell us anything about him?
Like I say, there's the 3 players that are out of contract. I wouldn't be surprised at all if no one gets announced as being released, and all of them get announced as contracts have been offered or discussions are ongoing. If one of the 3 a let go, or the time's come to an end. Whether it's been Ben Hinchliffe, I don't know, but I know that he has the testimonial stuff ongoing this summer. So it's obviously going to be a big summer for him. But like I say, if all three players get announced as being offered contracts and things are ongoing, and obviously we've seen that in previous years where they have been offered contracts and then they've gone on and left. I think Anthony Sarcevic was offered deals, and maybe Paddy Madden was potentially, and Will Collar was last season. So that's not to say that they'll stay. But if all three players get announced as having contracts offered, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, that sounds about right. In terms of the players out on loan, then the likes, I think Rydell and Moxon probably the two. Certainly Rydell. I know people wanted him to, myself included, thought he should have maybe had more of a chance to get fit. We were quite willing to stand by other players and keep them in the squad to get them fit, but not with him. Do you think their time has completely gone now, or is it dependent on manager?
It's hard, isn't it? Because if we just continue as we currently are with Dave Chandler in charge, and those players have decisions to make, I'm sure with the way the wind's blowing with the current manager, they'll know that Dave Chandler doesn't particularly want to keep Owen Moxon or Ryan Rydell or maybe even a Jadon Fevrier. So I imagine those agents will already be having conversations with clubs, and there might be conversations ongoing with County about offers and things like that. So you can't suddenly stop that because then there's talks around the current manager. It's hard. And then, again, you're talking hypothetically, but then if a new manager was to come in, if Dave Chandler decides that he doesn't want to continue, how far down the line are you with those players potentially leaving? So, again, it's difficult. And that's probably why, they are having talks this week. There are a lot of talks ongoing because they'll need to get it sorted nice and early so that you can have a full summer, especially with the uncertainty of a new sporting director of football, and Simon Wilson leaving. You don't want that first summer being uncertainty around what type of player you want to go for, as well as not being sure whether your manager is going to be in the dugout for the first game of the season. So there's a lot to be sorted early on. I don't know what you guys think, but any of the players that have gone out, Owen Moxon, it just hasn't worked. Again, maybe a big money move that hasn't worked, although at the time, did any of us think it was a bad move? He'd done.
No, I was buzzing with that.
Yeah, so was I. He'd won League One with Portsmouth. I know he didn't play for them really in the Championship, but they all rated him from his season winning the title with them in League One. We all know about him from his time at Carlisle. It just didn't work at all. Ryan Rydell, a young player, but again, there's been a lot of injuries. I know he's injured a lot at Exeter, but for my money, when he was in the county side, there wasn't anyone that could cross the ball better than he could. But do you persevere because of the injuries and things like that? And then Jadon Fevrier, I know that it's sort of the way it ended with Tanto Olafe in this second spell. People probably would have kept Jadon Fevrier, in that deal. But again, at the time, everyone was buzzing to get Tanto Olafe back. I don't think we'd known that Charlton were feeding him Popeye spinach every day. But it just didn't work. And Jadon Fevrier did all right at Charlton, so maybe they'll want him because of the way that Nathan Jones sets up. They use players like him in the position that he likes to play in. Scored a couple of goals in the season, scored the goal to keep him up in the Championship. So might get himself a move. And to be honest, with the way the club are going in terms of not listening to offers for the players, but they do want to start in terms of, I know we keep saying sustainability, even though it's not a thing, but they talk about sustainability. And if you're going to be that, if people come in and offer money for your Jadon Fevriers or other players within the squad, then you probably listen to them if they're decent offers. So again, I don't think there's anyone in that group that are out there at the moment, unless I'm forgetting anyone that probably will feel that they'll still be here next season unless something changes over the summer.
Yeah,
February will have added a 0 to his transfer fee anyway, getting some goals in the Championship.
Exactly, yeah. And again, it's all about opinions. I just felt it was so frustrating, and I was chatting to people at Charlton that report on the club and things like that, and because my expectation before I had those conversations was that they'd all be over the moon with him, and he scored a couple of goals. But the answer was, he's done all right. It wasn't, he's 10 out of 10 and things like that. He scored a couple, but he's been very much how we remember him, which is, rip a team apart for 45 minutes, then you'll start him for 3 games and he won't do anything. Then you'll put him on the bench, bring him back on, he'll rip a team apart, start him, and he doesn't do anything. So, so if you can get money for a player who you signed for not very much, then you'd probably entertain it.
I mean, it'd be an interesting way to make a profit on a player, but we'll take it. It's not the traditional way, but we have got who I believe is a Bolton fan in the comments. First asking if Louis Barry's been found safe and sound. We won't talk about that. But that leads me on to the next question regarding players. £20 and a big bag of what's-its for Ethan Pye. So is it fair to assume that if he doesn't sign a new contract this summer, we'll be cashing in probably for less than we could have got last year?
I mean, that's the obvious assumption, isn't it? Unless we just go full on, keep him for a season and let him go. But why would you do that? You're talking about, again, you're talking about being sustainable, and why would you keep a player for a season that he's then going to leave on a free when he's probably one of the highest, well, he is one of the highest rated defenders, young defenders in the entire EFL. So obviously there'll need to be, there will be conversations, there are conversations ongoing about the contracts. They've been trying to get him tied down for well over, before this year, this calendar year. Yeah. So from his side, I imagine it would have been, let's talk when we get to the Championship. That hasn't happened. If a club comes in, he's got a year left, he's 23. Again, I think you probably have to listen, but if they're going to offer 20 quid in a bag of what's-its, then you probably do hold out. So yeah, it's a tough one to balance, but it's a shame that we've got to this point. But from his side, why would you sign a new deal, with 2 years to go when you're in League One and you're not sure where you're going to be next season? He's had another good season. I think Kyle Wotton going into defence has only made Ethan Pye look even better, because Kyle Wotton's done really well. But all the talk is like, this defender's guided him through it, and which he has done. But yeah, it's such a tough one to balance. But if clubs come in, certainly Championship clubs, if Championship clubs come in and offer decent money, then you'd have to listen, I imagine. If it's a League One club that comes in, I think for me, you have to hold out for even more, because you can understand it going to a Championship club, but to go to a club at your level, unless they do offer huge money, money similar to what a Championship club would offer, then it's probably a bit more galling.
So if Simon Wilson was to go to Sheffield Wednesday, as seems to be the case, do you think there will be some sort of gentleman's agreement, or maybe something even more watertight than that, or will he just be able to come in and have who he wants?
Again, I don't know the ins and outs of how contracts work, but he didn't leave. He wasn't signed by Sheffield Wednesday from County. He left. It was announced that he was leaving County, and look, conversations would have been ongoing. I'm not daft enough to think that he's left without anything in the fire at all. But as of the point that he left, there was nothing signed with anyone else. There was no deal lined up at that time with anyone else, other than he would have been having conversations and chatting to some of the Sheffield Wednesday guys that report on the club. I think it was very much, even before the week that it all came out, that he was being linked with a move there. He was one of 4 or 5 that were in the process. So it wasn't definite, but I assume you can't have that sort of gentleman's agreement, if you've left, unless when he did leave, it was, if you do go to anyone in the next season or two, then you can't. But I think it'd be very unusual at that level. You can maybe understand it more with a manager, but maybe I'll be wrong, and if I am, then I'll let people know. But I'd be surprised.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Where else were we? We're getting a lot of people are catastrophizing over. I mean, let's point out we have our manager in place as it is, but hypothetically, some of the names people are throwing out. So obviously we know that Mark Stott's mates with Wayne Rooney. We know that he's mates with Robbie Savage. But one that drew the eye yesterday was Phil Neville leaving Portland Timbers. Imagine that.
If it's Phil Neville, I don't even know what I'll do. But yeah, I don't think I would be amazed if we go down that road of Wayne Rooney, Phil Neville's. If we, when the day comes that we need a manager, whether it's this summer, next summer, the year after, I would be amazed. I think obviously it was a much different vibe with going getting Sam Rust and getting a name, but either way, I think from how badly it went when Simon Wilson made his choice, and it wasn't a name that fans would have wanted or linked them with. I think they've maybe had the fingers burnt by how badly it went when it was a name that they've gone and found themselves. And if they are going to go and get someone, I think I'm confident that it would be someone, you know, that's managing in the country, in the EFL. And I don't know, you know, obviously, like I say, I've heard the stuff about Jim McNulty from fans and stuff like that. But aside from him, if the day comes that they need a manager, I'm confident that they'd be more sensible about it.
Yeah, if it was Phil Neville, I think I'd just have to go and support Cheadletown women. Oh, no, I can't.
Oh.
No, scratch that. I'll answer this one. What was Pep doing watching County? His landlord invited him. Done. Sorted. Right. I've still got people, weeks on, I still have like neutrals saying to me, "Oh, I see Pep was at County. What's that all about?" He's just a nerd and he wanted to watch some football. That's all there is to it.
Pretty much.
He's available now.
And I mean, it's proper County in it. Like the VAR stuff at the weekend, like it's just stuff that happens to County. And Pep Guardiola coming to watch County and us losing to Port Vale, who were already relegated. It's just County in it. Like, of course it is. I think Mark Stott was probably a bit embarrassed because I imagine he would have been working on bringing Pep to the game for a long while. And then I think we were 1-0 down after a few minutes, weren't we? But, yeah. Well, he's got a proper County experience anyway.
Yeah, that's how it should be. My mum mentioned it. They said, "Oh, Pep went to Savory's apparently." I was like, "No, I'm not having that, Mum. No, I'm not." And she's like, "No." And then she pulled up Savory's face. Now, my mum isn't an idiot, so I was surprised at this. But I mean, she raised one, but that's a different matter. But she showed me this picture on Savory's Facebook page that's clearly, it's not even AI. Someone's photoshopped Pep's head onto a generic picture of someone in a cafe. And I just had to. This was about 5 minutes before the game started on Sunday. I was like, I am not ready for this right now. I don't have the energy to be dealing with this as well as what's to come for the next 90 minutes / 2.5 hours. It's just, oh God. So we can nip. But it's the most lukewarm patter ever, isn't it?
It's a bit like, it's a bit like, I mean, I wasn't at the press conference before the pre-Wembley press conference, but I know there was a lot of stick about the amount of Guardiola questions. The lad from BBC Manchester, he asked the club beforehand, can he ask one about Guardiola leaving City, provided that he asks, you know, his questions about County and about Wembley, and then tags it on at the end, which he did, and I think that was fine, and that's how he got the answer about Guardiola ringing Challoner before the Leyton Orient Cup game, which is a good answer. And then, but I think because he's done it at the end, it's worked against him because the next lad has then gone and asked every single question about Pep. I didn't actually watch his segment because I get it from like a journalist that isn't affiliated with County, and then we all hate it. But to him, he's probably thinking, well, I don't care. But I just cringed a bit for him, and I just didn't watch it. But I believe there's questions about what apartment he lives at and things like that. So yeah, it just. Just drawing it there, and he's left now. So
we did get a textbook. I thought it was a wind up when Dave Challoner mentioned him ringing him. So phenomenal,
And speaking
Dave
of
Challoner's a cliché listener.
Exactly, and speaking about poor banter, a couple of replies to that tweet about the Leyton Orient phone call. You get the usual, "Oh yeah, sure he did, Dave." What a weird lie that would be. Like, why would a top end League One manager come out 4 days before Wembley and say the Man City manager phoned me for advice? Very easily disproven. So yeah, what a weird thing that would be to make up. So yeah, I think people online just have this thing, if they see something that even seems slightly too funny or interesting to be true, then they've got to jump on and say, "Oh yeah, things that didn't happen." So yeah, we got a bit of that.
Yeah. At Grok, is this true? Fuck off.
Exactly.
Speaking of silly things, so Sam, you reminded everyone earlier today on Twitter from your pre-season prediction. So Nick, who do you think Sam said his county top goal scorer will be this season?
I read this and I believe it was Benno, was it not?
No, it was Nathan Lowe.
I wish. To be fair, Nathan Lowe got a decent goals return up until January.
He did. Now the next one, really funny. County Player of the Year.
We've done an hour and 5 minutes here, lads. Let's call it that.
Who do you think his Player of the Year would have been?
That would have been a Mr. Malik Mothersell.
It would. Although we will give Sam credit. Dark horses, Bradford City, and predicted a 3rd place finish. So it wasn't all bad.
Yeah,
it's not too
I think I'll take it. I think the Malik Mothersell thing. Like you said earlier,
I thought it would have been too. So it wasn't a ridiculous shout. It's not a ridiculous thing to assume that your record signing is going to be good. So it's not.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, that's
and I like him. I think he's going to come good next year if he stays.
So what we should do is before we wrap up, finish on a little bit of positivity, because there are things to look forward to being in League One again next season. I know much the same thing, but we've got a lovely trip to Nottingham to come, which is always a nice weekend away. Sheffield Wednesday coming down, lovely weekend in Sheffield, and I've never been to Hillsborough for an actual game, so looking forward to that. Oxford,
in the
lovely
dugout,
weekend
but
away.
which one?
Hey! Oh God, don't! I'll clip that up and put it out, and that'll just go mental. That people are loving that. But I'm personally looking forward to Leicester because I've got family who are Leicester fans, so that'll be fun. Leicester are a really interesting one this season because it's quite possible that they could be on the brink of financial collapse. They basically sold their parachute payments to fund a promotion push last season, and ended up getting relegated. So they're either going to piss this league or go straight through the bottom again. It's going to be wild.
Yeah, and then you've got Sheffield Wednesday, who I don't think if Simon Wilson had lined a move up there, I don't think he would go without being assured that not a basket case. Obviously, they had the takeover. Apparently, they're sticking with Henrik Pedersen for this season. It's probably one of them things with Pedersen where they went down last season just because, obviously, they did because of the points deduction and the team that they had. But a bit like, obviously I say this with respect, but when Gary Ablett was at County that season, it's hard to know their management ability because they're managing a basket case of a club. So they'll stick with Pedersen and maybe he'll have them top and they'll do a Lincoln City, or maybe they'll be mid-table and they'll need to make a change. So I don't think Simon Wilson would have gone there or would have lined up to go there without that assurance. And then obviously there's been talk this week around them getting Jamie Vardy potentially, his hometown club. So interesting one to watch next season.
Yeah, I've seen some wild shouts in terms of signings today. Someone suggested Seamus Coleman on one of the boards today, and I absolutely. This is as a player, by the way, not as a manager. Yeah. Do we not learn? Do we not learn that in a position where we need energy and someone who's not been injured for the best part of 2 years, I can't be doing with it. And there'll be people suggesting Vardy. We're going to have it all summer. People will be saying we should go in for Jamie Vardy. And it's going to be why I'm so excited. I'm just so excited for... And I know this season has felt like the biggest slog since the National League North, like mentally and whatever. Not in terms of the quality and everything, but just mentally, just getting through it. There's not really been a single game where I've really enjoyed it. There's not been a single game where we've played well for 90 minutes, really. So it's just felt like such like so. As soon as the final whistle went on Sunday, I was glad of a bit of a break. But I know we're going to get about 2 weeks in, and we'll get like into the first week of the World Cup, and then it'll be like, all right, because we'll start getting drip fed this information. We'll be getting towards the fixtures. We'll be seeing signings, friendlies will be getting announced, and that'll be it again. Just ready to do it again. One last one, R2 Hoskinen. Do you reckon we'll see him next week? Do you reckon we'll ever see him? Yeah, I mean, you've seen him in person, haven't you? So he exists.
I have. He does exist. I can confirm he exists. I think he was very close to being on the bench on Sunday.
Seems like yeah.
Instead, it was. I was told in the build-up it would be him or Callum Connolly. I suppose they've gone with Connolly because they've got that trust in him that they can't have in Hoskinen because they've never seen him play in a competitive match. It's probably a bit harsh to go from nothing to playing at Wembley.
I think Connolly's a bit more versatile as well, which helps.
Yeah. He just, I don't know, because he just broke down from day one, didn't he? And I think it's fair to say at the time there was a departure from the medical team early in the season. I know that it didn't centre around that, but there was part of the issue I think came around that Hoskinen, not the signing, but then once he signed, there was conversations I believe around what he can and can't do in training, and I think maybe what they were told he could do, he couldn't, or vice versa. And I know that Dave Chandler in a post-match interview early in the season mentioned something that he couldn't talk about medical issues. And again, I always think that Dave Chandler, he is really open, but if there's things he can't or won't say, he'll often let you read between the lines. So I think from day one, we've signed him, he's come in. He's not played for a few months because his previous club, basically, when they found out he was leaving on a free transfer, just dropped him for the last month of the season or 2 months. Got injured in pretty much his first session. then if you remember early in the season, it was like October was the date for him to come back. Then it was January. Then it just went on like that. And I think he just got off to the worst possible start, and it's just snowballed from there. So, there's no point me saying he's fit now and that's it, because we've seen in the past that when he has been fit or, getting close to fitness, he's then broken down again, which is probably only natural. So I don't know. If we don't see him, I wouldn't be surprised. And if we do, maybe it'd be a nice surprise.
Just on him, there's obviously a running joke around, well, does he exist, does he not, blah, blah, blah. You will have spoken to him a few times. He's been in the Finnish press to say he's never cried so much as what's happened this season. So, like, how is he? You spoke to him. It's easy to have a laugh, but yeah, is he all right? He must be gutted.
Have we lost him?
Oh, I thought I was one who froze. Is it Sam who's gone?
Who's avoiding questions now?
Freeze on as well.
It's all well and good with all the shit patter and everything. It's easy to forget that there is a human being in there, and he's moved to this country. It's first time
sticking with him.
Yeah, it's the first time he's moved to this country and everything. It must be a bit grim for him, and he's back.
Look what you froze on, Sam.
Wi-Fi issues in the house. What can you do? Talking about injury problems and my entire house breaks down. So there you go. Sorry, he was talking in the Finnish press. He was. I know. You got to the part about him speaking in the Finnish press.
Yeah, so which I remember reading. You've spoke to him a lot, obviously, this season. Just how is he? It's easy to forget that he's a human footballer. He's just
Yeah, he's obviously, like, I've spoken to him a couple of times, and even seeing him on Sunday after the match at Wembley, obviously they all looked disappointed and were walking out with the heads bowed and stuff like that. But you can just tell, can't you, sometimes with someone, like he's come to England, it just hasn't worked out, and so far, and like, we saw in that piece, he's gutted, and that's kind of what he's got across to people when we've spoken to him at Carrington, when we've done press bits with him. But to be fair, like at Carrington, they do have a lot of, I know they have a lot of like support staff and things like that, and they have been doing a lot of stuff with him just to keep him involved and making sure he's like integrated with the group and stuff like that. So, and this will probably be one of those things that I say and then we never see him play. But from what I hear, when they've seen him play in training and stuff, they really rate him. So, and last summer, I was told things and heard things around, well, when we step up to the Championship, a back three of Hills, Hoskinen and Pye will be our sort of, that'll be our Championship defence. So that was obviously the plan. They obviously really rated him and we're really excited by it. And it's just after breaking down in pretty much day one because of that, whatever it was, miscommunication or something that someone has done wrong, whatever it was, I can't speculate too much. But like I say, I know that was part of the issue of what did go wrong. So I hope we see him, but like I say, if we don't see him, I wouldn't be surprised, but it could go either way.
Yeah. Interesting. Dave, is there anything else before we wrap up?
No, just if any late joiners, in summary, Sam's confirmed there'll be no Dave Challoner next season. He's going to Sheffield Wednesday with, no, I'm joking, no.
And we move into a new stadium in Wilmslow.
Yeah, it's been really good having you on, Sam.
Course.
Lots of myths put to bed, lots of answers to lots of questions that we've received. So yeah, thanks for giving us your time tonight.
No
Is
problem.
there anything you'd want to say, Sam, that's not been said or that hasn't come up that you want to clear up?
I don't think so. I'll probably look on Twitter and whatever after, and I've been saying that Challoner's leaving. Like I say,
no, that was a joke. You definitely haven't said that.
Yeah. My gut feeling, I lean slightly more towards him not being here, and I saw a little bit around me and John sort of questioning him out of the blue about that on Sunday, which wasn't the case. We hear things around the club, and you know from speaking to him that he wants to manage in the Championship, and that you get a vibe, don't you, of maybe they want to have a conversation this summer about whether both parties still fancy it and whether there is that sort of appetite to like go again. So yeah, I think I said before, I think I'd be probably 60-40 at the minute, towards him not being here on the opening day. If he is, I would be absolutely delighted. Because like I say, I'm never going to say that if people have an opinion of him or they think we can do better, then we're all county fans, and I'm never going to tell someone they're wrong for that. I just think with Dave Challinor in charge, we're very likely to be top 6. With someone else, it's possible, but we don't know.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah. Oh, it's the uncertainty we love. Right. Well, thank you for joining us tonight, Sam. And also, I'm sure everyone will join me in saying thank you for your coverage throughout the season. Your insights, much appreciated.
Thank you, guys.
We'll have you on again soon. We'll
Yes.
have a nice little break, and then we'll have you back, and we'll be chatting new signings and fixtures and Phil Neville and all sorts. It's going to be great.
We can do a same manager bulletin when Dave Challinor's announced to stay in for 10 more years.
Sorted, easy. Right, everyone. We will. I don't think this will be our last one of the season. I'm sure there'll be a retain list to discuss, and
and also,
the confirmation of who's going to be in charge next season.
You'll remember after the Virtue final, there was parts of the programme where we engaged in a lovely quiz show type game.
Oh, we've got that,
and
haven't we, as well?
More on Sunday, so we'll do that next week.
Excellent. Yes. Right. Sorted. Right. Cheers, everyone, for tuning in. Like bumper numbers tonight. That's it. You get a big name in. This is what happens. So take note when you're thinking of Phil Neville. Right. We will see you probably next week. We will let you know when. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching it all the way through the season, culminating in disappointment, but it was still fun for the most part, was it not? Dave, say goodbye to the viewers.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for watching.
Bye. Cheers, everyone.